Okay, hello everyone. Um, we're going to continue with the setup of my new development machine. It's a MacBook, and just to recap of what we did last time is picked the wallpaper, installed iterm2. That's the terminal I use. We added a little bit of transparency for iterm here. We increased the scroll back length in iterm settings. We set startup shell as D shell. So if we go to item setting, profiles, here we can see that command to run the iterm, the startup shell is just bin.zsh instead of default login shell. So that basically removes last login blah 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 message and allows us to open new tabs and like new terminal windows much faster than we can do now, like we can do by default. So yeah, and also I believe I did off stream is that we can I removed the marker. I think was somewhere here. Yep, this mark indicator basically it was showing up here as like arrow type of icon, which was a little bit annoying. So now the only problem with the change um, of the shell that we start on terminal, like new windows or new tabs, is that we don't get all the paths. So now let's say if we go to our default terminal here, you can see that it still starts with the login shell, which is fine. And if we check the path that we have here, you can see a bunch of things here. Now, and if we try to do it in iterm instead, we'll get just few only. So now I guess this is fine. I'm not really sure if there will be any issues with this, but just for the sake of it, I think we should synchronize this thing. Because, for example, I have VS Code installed, which we did last stream. And if you open VS Code and when you run this command, for example, which allows you to run VS Code directly from terminal, what it does, it will actually create a file, a shortcut, yeah, a symlink, I guess, that will be running from your local bin. So let me see. And yep, it will just put code executable here in the user slash local slash bin. Now the problem is that if I try to run this code from iterm now, because we're not using login shell, I'm not able to access this code binary. So what I have to do now to basically synchronize the path between login shell and default ZSA. So I don't exactly remember how to add paths in Z shell, so we are going to look up. That's how we're going to start. But yeah, besides those things, what we did, we installed Brew. We installed Git from Brew so that we can update Git via Homebrew. We configured ZSH a little bit. So what we did is we installed Plugin Manager, and for Plugin Manager, we are using something that I was not using before. So let me in my page config. Yep. So we are using something called init. Basically, it's plugin manager that claims to make things faster. I'm not really sure if it does so, but I guess I'm just going to try it out. I wanted to try something new. I know for a fact that something that I was using before is on my Z shell a long time ago. It was quite slow. I'm not sure how it is now because I wasn't using any ZSH plugins for like a couple of years, but I decided that it would be good to have few of them, because prior to ZSH I was using fish shell, and I want to have those nice things that Z shell had. So basically syntax highlighting, auto suggestion, and auto completion. So that's why this time my ZSH will have a plugin manager, and yeah, I just picked Z in it. We'll see how it goes. Maybe I will change that, but so far it seems nice. It's quite easy to set up. You just get basically this chunk from their official documentation, paste it in your ZSHRC. And then to set up plugins, it's mostly as easy as just adding this line, but in some cases you need to have additional configuration, but pretty easy to find documentation for this, so I think it's fine for now. I think it's manageable, so yeah, we'll just do that. And here the only thing that we have as well is the homebrew, so this just puts our homebrew to the path. Yeah, so that's all we did with Z shell. Yeah, and also we have configuration for Starship prompt. So if we go to .config, here I think we have Starship normal. Yeah, so we picked this preset that emulates one of the famous prompts called pure. It just basically gives me a somewhat nice looking prompt, but still pretty minimal. So yeah, what we did. And yeah, so that's basically it. I mean, yep, we installed VS Code, and that's all. So now I think the first thing that we're going to do is to actually make sure that we have path set. Let's just do it this way. Now, yep, let's search how to do that, because I'm not actually sure. Let's close this. There will be no game development today. Not anytime soon, I think. Yeah. So set path, get stage, search that up. Okay, so that's wonder if this is required. So what we do is do this to open our CS page code. So now what we need to do is this is same as the one we get in terminal login shell. So what we can see here is the init homebrew, iterm stuff. Have quite a bit of stuff. Have Starship here. Have homebrew. Okay, then we have local B. Uh, I guess what we can do is I wonder what is this for. So if we can just oh we do. Yep, that should solve the problem. I think we can just do pass file. Yes. Look this up. Uh okay, there is some file. Well, I'm now curious why doesn't it source it by default, but I think um oh, I'm going to close this and open it again. Permission denied. Okay. That's interesting. Why? Could be because of this protected page. do this one. Okay, I think we are going to just add it one by one. I think control. Add this. In so for the most part, all of these are just were executables of some programs. So, yep. I'm still not sure what is this for, but I guess we can just keep it. Okay. Now, I wonder if this is an apparently. Yep, now we can, now it works just fine. Yeah. Okay, so one thing I'm going to do that annoys me a bit is change control key apps. So we're going to remap caps lock to control, because that's what I'm using. And do it in keyboard. Here. So this would be control, and now control will be caps. Done. Using rectangle to map to control option arrow keys to manage my windows. More comfortable pressing caps lock instead of control. So in any software basic. We're going to lock the setting too. So are done this. Apps lock control. This one. Okay, now I think we're going to change the fonts here. Right now this font is just whatever is iterms default, and don't want that. To install fonts, we're going to use Homebrew. I think there is a big font duplicate. Yeah, this is hard. Tab. check this directly. uh, font of choice, JetBrains. Oh, no. Yeah, that's how we do it. Add this tab and then we can install all of this. This. Oh wow, that's interesting. It was actually created. I remember seeing this before. Let's see if there is any date on this. Oh, it was deprecated quite recent. Okay, makes sense. Fine. Just probably just to cast install font. Yeah, okay, it works. That's how it works now. Makes sense, makes sense. I remember seeing that gist. Remember seeing this guide before. Just recently deprecated. Quite cool that they merged it with the main homebrew repo. Quite convenient. Okay, so now I think we can set the font here first. I believe with profiles, as text, font, this. Probably make the font bigger later. Yep. Right. This one. Okay, now we are going to continue watching the video that we watched yesterday about ZSH config. We're basically basing our configuration based on the video that we watched yesterday, and it goes over these 3 plugins which I'm planning to install anyway, so might as well watch that video. Quite cool video with all the tricks, so we're going to watch that, and I think, yeah, after that we'll do some fun things with zoxide and yeah. Go to YouTube, post this, and I'm pretty sure we had that video somewhere here. So that's
Start
the
typing
video.
out the code.
Going to shut down for a moment here.
And then search through my historical suggestions, you'll see that it shows other commands not related to curl. We can resolve this by heading over to our Z shell RC and adding in the following lines, which binds the Control P and Control N keys to history search backwards and history search forwards respectively. Wizard. Now that we have our Zenful prompt added, let's move on to some other plugins to power up our Z shell experience. The first plugins I like to add are what I call the Big 3, and are used to provide the foundation for our setup. These are syntax highlighting, tab completions, and auto suggestion.
Yeah, basically these 3 plugins that we're going to install, and I think let's check their docs one by one. So let's complete this video first for a bit.
With syntax highlighting, which we can add in using the following line. This plugin does pretty much what it says on the tin and enables nice syntax highlighting for our commands. The next plugin to add is Z-Shell Completions, which provides autocomplete functionality for a number of different CLI tools. We can add this using the following line. However, we also need to tell Z-Shell to automatically load our completions whenever it starts, which is done as follows. Now, when I open up a new terminal window and start typing out a command, I can press the Tab key to see any completions associated with it. You can see which tools this plugin provides completions for on the GitHub repo, and whilst it does cover a lot of tools, it doesn't cover every single one. However, I'll show you how to add other completions later on. The last of the big three is Z-Shell Auto Suggestions, which I believe is the most popular Z-Shell plugin. This plugin provides auto suggestions based on your command history, similar to what the fish shell provides. However, unlike the fish implementation, I find the Z-Shell one to be a lot more configurable. To make accepting auto suggestions just a little bit easier, I like to bind it to the Control F key. You can
Okay,
implementing
so
history,
we're going to
most popular Z-Shell.
all these guys. So we're going to right. I believe take wow. Light. Then that will be this one. Already have. Then go for auto set. Copy here. Okay, now this one would require some configuration. Quite a bit of stuff, but the guy here is actually making it the way I want, so we can just follow exactly what he did and just continue to watch this.
Suggestions based on your command history, similar to what the fish shell provides. However, unlike the fish implementation, I find the Z-Shell one to be a lot more configurable. To make accepting auto suggestions just a little bit easier, I like to bind it to the Control F key. You can do so by adding it in the following line. However, personally, I prefer to just set my key bindings to Emacs mode, which not only sets up the Control F key for accepting a suggestion, but also provides a number of other useful key bindings, such as Control B for moving backwards through the prompt, Control F for moving forwards if there's no auto suggestion, Control A to jump to the start of the prompt, and Control E to jump to the end. Additionally, you can also cycle backwards and forwards through your auto suggestion history using Control P and Control N respectively. The number of hotkeys that Emacs mode provides is pretty substantial. Too much for this one video. If you'd like another video on that, however, then let me know in the comments down below. With that, the auto-suggestion plugin is enabled. However, we currently have a bit of an issue. You'll notice if I open up a new terminal window, none of the commands from my other shell session are being suggested to me. In order for our command history to persist between sessions, we need to set up and enable a few options inside of our configuration. To do so, we're going to add in a few lines, which I'll explain one by one. First of all is hist size, which we're setting to be 5000. This sets.
We're going to do that. Wonder if they have docs. Check. That the information in the video is up to date, which it seems to be. Okay. commands for spelling. There, where can the actual stage thingy? Okay, that makes sense. But reasonable.
Number of commands we want to be saved inside of our history. Feel free to increase or decrease this depending on your preference. The second variable sets our history file, which is the file that increase this depending on your preference. The second variable
Yeah.
our history file, which is the file that's used to store all of our historical commands. The next variable is saved hist, which needs to be the same size as hist.
Okay.
The next variable is hist dupe, which we're setting to be erase. This will erase any duplicates inside of our history file. Next up is going to be our Z shell options. The first one is the append history option, which causes Z shell to append any commands to the history file. Overwriting it. Next, we're setting the share history option, which
Important.
history file, rather than overwriting it. Next, we're setting the
So that we can share the across different.
history option, which will share our command history across all Z shell sessions at the same time. Afterwards, let's set the hist ignore space option.
This one allows us to append the space before the command, so it's not saved to the history, so we can use some stuff there. Oh my god.
option, which allows us to prevent a command from being written to the history file by adding a space before it. This is useful to prevent any sensitive information from being saved in your history file. Next up, we have
Okay.
hist ignore all dupes, hist save no dupes, and ignore dupes.
Okay, that's an interesting set of options. Prevents us having duplicates. Okay.
Are used to prevent any duplicate commands from being saved inside of our history. Lastly, we have the hist find no dupes option, which will prevent any duplicates from being shown to inside of our historical search. Now, if I open up a new window, you can see that my historical commands are being suggested and I'm able to cycle through them using Ctrl-P and Ctrl-N. However, there's another thing I like to configure. If I start typing out the curl command and then search through my historical suggestions, you'll see that it shows other commands not related to curl. We can resolve this by heading over to our Z shell RC and adding in the following lines, which binds the Ctrl-P and Ctrl-N keys to history search backwards and history search forwards respectively. Now if I open up another terminal window and begin typing out the curl command again, if I press Ctrl-P to start cycling through my history, you'll see I only receive results that match that prefix. With that, we
All right.
have a keys to history.
So the key bindings that he's using is basically Emacs mode, which allows you to use some Emacs specific key bindings with Z shell. I'm not really sure if I want that, but actually we can just start with that. In my case, I'm quite okay with these key bindings. And then we will see to change later. Set it to Emacs mode, and then we have to yeah, we can try this and see how it goes. I might change the key bindings though, but for now it makes sense. Yep, this one, that's how we do this thing.
Backwards and history search forwards respectively. Now if I open up another terminal window and begin typing out the curl command again, if I press Ctrl-P to start cycling through my history, you'll see I only receive results that match that prefix. With that, we have the foundation for completions, auto suggestions, and command history configured. Now we can begin adding in some more powerful improvements to our completions UI. First things first, we need to complete one issue with our current completion setup. If I head on over to a terminal window and start typing out the cd command followed by a capital D, when I start pressing tab, you'll see it will show completions for the 3 directories that match inside of my home folder. However, if I try to do this with a lowercase d, then nothing will match. That's because by default, the auto-completion is case sensitive. Fortunately, we can resolve this with the following line, which configures a Z-style for the completion matcher list, causing lowercase characters to also match with uppercase ones as well. Now, if I test this out, you can see that we can autocomplete on the lowercase d. One thing you may have noticed in the autocomplete results is that there's no color to them. Ideally, we want any files or directories to be colored as if we were using the ls-color command. To begin, let's first go ahead and create an alias for the ls command to point to ls-color. Then we can add in the following line to enable this for our Z-style completion as well. With that, the completions will also have colors applied just like they would with ls-color. Okay, now that we have some basic styling for completions added, let's turn it up a notch and add in an interactive fuzzy finding menu for completions and reverse searching. To achieve this, we're going to use FZF, which is a fuzzy finding tool for the terminal, and incredibly powerful. To begin, you'll need to make sure you have FZF installed on your system, which you should be able to do using your package manager. Once installed, we can then set up the FZF shell integration by adding in the following line to our Z shell configuration. This will enable a few things, but one of my favorites is the fuzzy finding on our reverse search, which you can invoke using Control and R. For comparison, this is what it looks like without FZF enabled. As well as displaying the results in a fuzzy finding window, it'll also allow us to navigate using Control P and Control N. Personally, I find this to be a much better experience than the default menu, which we can actually bring to our completions menu as well. To do so, we need to add a new plugin with Z-init for FZF tab, which we can do with the following line. Then, to make things work a little nicer, add in the following line to disable the default Z-shell completion menu. Now, if I open up another window and start a tab completion, you'll see that this loads an interactive FZF window, which we can both navigate and search through. This is awesome, but we can also add some even more customization to this window, such as displaying a preview of our directories when we run the CD auto-completion. This is enabled by adding in the following Z-style configuration. FZF tab is incredibly powerful and we can do a lot more with it. However, I'm going to save that for another video. Whilst we're on the subject of completions, I mentioned earlier I'd show you how to add plugins for other CLI tools. The best place to find these is in the plugins directory of the OhmyZShell repository. However, as you may have noticed, I've actively chosen to not use OhmyZShell, mainly because I find it quite bloated and it has a noticeable impact on shell startup times. Fortunately, we can add these plugins individually using Z-init's snippet functionality, which allows us to download and install a plugin via a URL, or in the case of OhmyZShell, a defined namespace. Let's use this to install the Git plugin from the OhmyZShell repository, which provides a number of different aliases for various Git commands. To do so, all we need to do is add in the following line into our zshell RC. This line uses the OMZP namespace, which points to the OhmyZShell plugins URL, followed by the path to the plugin, in our case Git. Now if I open up another terminal window, you can see that I have the Git aliases available. The other snippets I like to add are the sudo, Arch Linux, AWS, kubectl, kubecontext, and the command not found plugins. As well as these, go ahead and add in the zinit cdreplay-q command underneath where we load our comp init. This is used by zinit to replay all cached completions, which is recommended by the documentation. We're really close to the end. There's just one last thing I like to add into my configuration: zoxide. If you're unaware, zoxide allows you to easily navigate around your file system using fuzzy matching, which saves me a load of time and allows me to stay focused. I've done a whole nother video on zoxide if you're interested, so go ahead and check that out. We can add zoxide to our configuration using the following line. Additionally, we need to add another completion style in order for previews to work with zoxide as well. All that remains now is adding anything custom that's specific to your own environment, such as any custom aliases for commonly used commands, or any directories you want to add to your shell path. If you're using macOS, you're also going to want to add in the following line, which is needed to make any homebrew installed apps available on your path. With that, we've managed to configure the ultimate Zenful Z-shell setup. Now is a good time to go ahead and add your new configuration file.
Okay, there's quite a bit of things that he did, and I don't think I'm going to have all of them personally. I think it's a bit too much.
Inside of that's with the following line, which configures a Z.
So the case sensitive,
now, if I test this out,
insensitive completion is not something that I want to have.
Dash color. Then we can add in the following line to enable this for our Z-style.
Adding color completion. That's not really.
With that, the completions will also have colors applied. Completions added. Reverse searching. To achieve this, we're
okay. So I think we're good now. Not going to follow all of the. Quite okay. Now, I don't think I plug in for now. This are done with all of the. Now we have zoxide and FZF, which he already showed, but there is another guy that I saw that I think we're going to add. So basically, the oxide is a replacement kind of alternative for default cd command, which allows you to navigate through your folders like in a better way. And I won't be able to give a better introduction than the video here, so we're just going to watch this, follow along.
cd, or change directory, is undoubtedly one of my most used commands. Having used it for as long as I've been working in the terminal, I've never felt like anything was missing or anything more was needed. So when I came across zoxide, which describes itself as the smarter cd command, I was intrigued. What more could I possibly need? Well, as it turns out, quite a lot. After using it for about a week in my system, I can confidently say that it's improved the way I work in the terminal for the better. The command allows me to navigate around my projects and directories at a much greater speed, and does so whilst saving me brain cycles in the process. All of this translates to saving me time, keeping me focused, and making me more productive. Let me show you how it works. The first thing you'll need to do is install zoxide onto your system. To do so takes a couple of steps. The first one is to download and install the zoxide binary onto your operating system. You can do this with either Cargo or your operating
I'm gonna make sure config broken this. Now we have text oxide, and we need else follow along.
Systems Package Manager. As I'm using Arch, by the way, I'll install it using Pacman. Once installed, the next step is to set it up on your shell. The documentation lists instructions for all of the major ones, such as bash, zshell, fish, and even posix. In my case, I'm using zshell, so all I need to do is add the following line to the end of my .zshellrc. I can do this using the following command. Now, if I open up a new terminal, I have the z command available to me. So, what can it do? Well, nothing special yet. In order to unlock zoxide's true potential, we need to first train it by navigating around our file system like we would do normally, but using the z command instead. To do so is pretty much the same as using cd. If we want to change into another directory, we just use the z command and pass in the directory's path, which can be either relative or absolute. If we want to return to our home directory, then we can just use the z command by itself, and if we want to return to the previous directory, we can do so by passing in a dash instead of a path. So far, all of this is pretty much in parity with the way that cd works. As I said, none of this is special. However, after you've used zoxide for a little bit, that's when things start to become interesting. Let's say I want to make some changes to my neovim config. In order to do so, I need to navigate to the directory that contains my neovim configuration files. This is all the way in my home.config/nvim/lua/custom directory, which is nested pretty deep. In order to get there with cd, I have to use the full path every time, which can be rather tedious. The only ways to speed this up are by using either my zshell history or defining a custom alias for any directories that I use frequently. With zoxide, however, if I want to get there quickly, all I have to do is type in z nvim custom, and it takes me straight there. Yeah, that's pretty awesome. So how does it work? Well, as I've been navigating around, zoxide has been working in the background, adding weights to my most frequently visited paths. This means that if I want to jump into a directory that I've already visited with zoxide, I can do so using path fragments rather than specifying the entire thing. Zoxide will then use its internal matching algorithm to determine which path to use. This algorithm has four main properties. The first is that the search term is case insensitive, meaning that you can write your terms in lowercase and they'll still match to any mixed or uppercase path components. Secondly, all of the terms that you provide must be contained within the path in the same order. For example, whilst mvim lower matches, lower mvim will not. This is because there is no path entry that contains those terms in that order. The third matching rule states that the last component of the last keyword must match the last component of the path. For example, dreams recorder will match the following path. This is because the path and the term both end with recorder. However, if I use the term dreams tools, then that won't match. This is because none of my path entries end with tools as their last component. And the final part of the algorithm is that all matches are returned in descending order of their weights. This means that any conflicts are resolved with the path containing the highest weight being chosen. In my case, I have two paths that end in .config. If I use the zconfig command, then it will choose the path with the highest weight. This weight value is known as the frequency, which is an amalgamation of frequency and recency, and these two properties define the value of the weight or score. The first is the frequency, which is the number of times that the directory has been visited. Each time it is, then its rank goes up by 1 point. The second property is the recency, which is how long ago the directory was last visited. The documentation goes into detail about how this works. Each score has a modifier based on the amount of time since it was last accessed. If the last access time was within 1 hour, then the score is multiplied by 4. Within the last day, it's multiplied by 2. If it's within the last week, the score is divided by 2, otherwise it's divided by 4. All of this makes zoxide incredibly dynamic, especially compared to alternatives such as creating aliases, which are typically static and require you to have to create and manage them manually. In addition to this, because zoxide removes the need for me to type uppercase characters and symbols, my fingers never travel far from the home row, which increases my typing speed for navigation. And because I no longer need to remember the full path, it's much easier on my brain to remember where I need to go. Even with this, I can still sometimes forget. When that happens, I find that looking at a list helps to give my brain a friendly nudge. Fortunately, that's where another feature of zoxide comes in handy. In order to enable this feature, we need to install another package on our system. This is FZF. FCF is a fuzzy finder tool for the terminal. If I install it using Pacman and then run it, you can see how it works. It lists all of the files in my directory and allows me to search for them in a fuzzy way. Pretty cool, but by itself it's not that useful. However, when combined with zoxide, it becomes incredible. If I type in the zi command, which stands for zoxide interactive, we're now shown an FCF window containing a list of all the directories we've visited using zoxide, in descending order of their score. I can scroll through this list using Ctrl-P and Ctrl-N, or I can just search for a directory with fuzzy finding by typing out the name. By doing so, I can then select the entry I want and I'll be navigated to it. As well as the zi command, you can also bring up an interactive menu whilst you're typing out your terms. To do so, start typing out the prefix of the directory you wish to change to. Then, when you want to bring up the menu, press the space key followed by pressing the tab key, which brings up another fuzzy finder window. Rather than showing all of our paths like the zi command does, this will only show a subset of our entries that match the given prefix. Both of these features are really useful for those times you need a visual clue to give you a nudge in the right direction. However, as you can imagine, the list of entries in the zoxide database can start to grow rather large. Fortunately, zoxide does age these off once the total score gets to above 10,000 by default. This then triggers a rebalancing event, causing all of the scores in the database to be recalculated. Afterwards, any scores that fall below a certain threshold are then removed from the database. In addition to this, zoxide also provides a number of commands to perform CRUD operations on the entries that zoxide manages. The first of these is the add command, which will allow you to either add a directory or increment its rank without having to travel to it. Next is the query command, which allows you to search for a directory in the database. You can also display the score of any results using the -s flag, or list all of the entries by using -l. The remove command allows you to delete any directories from the database, which is handy if zoxide resolves to any unwanted paths. And finally, the edit command brings up an interactive window which will allow you to modify entries in the database. Through this menu, you can either increment or decrement the rank of an entry, or remove an entry entirely. All of this can be done using the keys listed at the top of the menu. So at this point, I'm pretty convinced. zoxide definitely improves my workflow. However, there's a catch. As I mentioned at the start, cd is one of my most used commands. Therefore, undoing that muscle memory is going to be very difficult. Not only that, but if I have to change to using the z command for navigation, anytime I move or SSH onto another machine that doesn't have zoxide installed, I'll need to adjust my muscle memory again. This results in the zoxide command becoming a crutch. To prevent this from happening, I can rebind the cd command to use zoxide instead. The easiest way to do this is to just use a shell alias. However, I prefer to take a different approach. The zoxide init command allows us to pass in an option called cmd, which changes the prefix of both the z and zi commands. We can add this to the init command inside of our shell rc file. Here we'll add the --cmd option specifying the cd command. Once that's added, we can then save and close our file and open up a new terminal to test it out. Now I no longer have the z command available. However, if I run which on the cd command, you can see that it's aliased to the zoxide z command instead. Now I can use cd as I would do normally, whilst also taking advantage of the features of zoxide. Additionally, by aliasing this way, we also now have access to interactive mode using cdi. One thing to make note of, however, is this doesn't work for new shell or any POSIX space shells. However, for Z-Shell, Bash, and Fish, this works absolutely fine. For me, I'm pretty happy with this setup. Because I live in the terminal so much, using zoxide for my cd command.
Okay, so essentially, zoxide will allow us to navigate through directories much faster, and the best thing about it, it has special algorithm to keep the frequency of the directories that we visited, so that every time, usually when I start up my PC, I would just go to the directory of the code that I'm working on now. So this zoxide will allow us to navigate there much faster and just get on with our work. So one thing that we are going to do now to install FZF. So that would be useful for fuzzy binding files and has integrations with our shell. And later on, when we're going to set up NeoVim, it will be helpful there as well. So pretty sure we can brew here. But shell this way. So now let's go back to the video.
Use commands, but if I have to change that doesn't have zoxide installed, I'll need to adjust my muscle memory. I can rebind the cd command to use z. However, I prefer to take a different approach. The zoxide init command allows us to pass cmd, which changes the prefix of both the z and zi commands. We can add this to the init command inside of our shell rc file. Here we'll add the --cmd option specifying the cd command. Once that's added, we can then save and close our file and open up a new terminal to test it out. Now I no longer have the z command available. However, if I run which on the cd command, you can see that it's aliased to the zoxide z command instead. Now I can use cd as I would do normally, whilst also taking advantage of the features of zoxide. Additionally, by aliasing to the end of my .zshell rc. And I can do this using the following command. Now if I open up a new terminal, I have the...
Okay, so I guess we can try it out. So first, let's try to document back the document. Where are we? It just create a new. No, it didn't. Oh, that's Yes, it's wow, but that's interesting fact that we can just do this. What's that directory? Oh, never mind, I guess. Wow, that's interesting. Okay, I guess we should search it up. Because oh, dating. So, oh, that yeah, that makes sense. The documents actually exist. That's confusing now, man. Give it a actually. I have no idea what is this picture. Ah, just fine. Yep, so now we can navigate through directories this way. Fine. Okay. So we have these two set up. That be the next few things that we're going to do. But I think for Git, let's leave it first. That's something I'm going to do off stream, I imagine. For iterm2 colors theme, leave it first. Tmax, leave it first as well. The one thing that we're to install not right. Okay, I think the first thing that we're going to do is to actually make sure that we have our configurations saved to the Git. That takes. So we are going to save CS stage. We are going to save Starship Tomol as well. I think that would be it for now. manage our dot files, basically, we're going to use the utility called stow. We're going to install this guy. So I wonder how we can do this. Probably need manual. Oh, that would be. Okay, let's. Yep. So the stow will basically allows us to synchronize any directory that we have. So in my case, for example, I want to create a directory called dot files. So all of our configurations will live in this dot files directory, and we are going to make it a Git repository. Actually, one thing that we're going to do is let's set this to main. Yep, let's do that, and we'll store all of our configuration files in this dot files directory, which we're going to version control with Git. And stow will allow us to run one command to actually synchronize our dot files directory with the actual paths where config should reside. So for example, in case of our Starship prompt config, since it's in a config folder, what we'll need to do is to make sure that from dot files it will automatically go to the config directory, and we also want to make sure that every time I edit something in config, let's say, it's also being edited in my dot files, so that later I can push it to my GitHub. Now for that we're going to create symlinks, but we're not going to do it manually. We're going to use stow basically, and you can just follow this guide, I believe, to make sure that we set it up correctly. So let's actually, how can it work? Dot files. Okay, then we just run dot. Well, let's try it out. So what we are going to do now is to move our configs to dot files. So let's move the HRC first to dot files, then move our Starship toml to our dot files. So let's check now. We have here oh no, I just renamed the file, I think. Comment. Where is our CSHRC now? Oh yeah, wait, hold on. It was moved. Yeah, we have ZSHRC and Starship toml. Now, the directory structure in our dot files must follow the same exact structure as our home folder. So Starship toml, because it's located in our config directory, in dot files it should follow exactly the same thing. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a directory here called .config. We're going to move this to our .config directory. So now this is basically the structure that we have, and I believe what we can do now is basically run store dot, which probably did the job. So let's check if our shrc here now. Yep, so we can see that the only thing that it does is just create symlink. So now let's say I have a new laptop or something and I'm setting things up again. All I need to do is to pull my .files directory and run store dot command, and it will synchronize my configurations like on any new setup that I might have. Okay, so yeah, let's double check that conf. Yep, we have Starship terminal config now. So when we go to dot files and git potatoes to check, and then we can just git commit all of this. Add and where folder to commit from that was the M part here. Yep, have this, and we need to configure this, so I'm going to do that later, and I'll just put it up, and I guess I will share the links for my dot files there as well. Okay, terminal fine. Yep. Okay, so we have Stow installed. So we have this done. And okay, I think that would be, yeah, that would be it for today. Pretty much enough to have a usable Z shell terminal. Shell. Now we have a terminal, we have ZSH configured, we have all the nice things that other shells have. We have colors, we have auto suggestions, completion, and not only we have that, but it also works incredibly fast. So much faster than your, considerably faster, I wouldn't say much faster, considerably faster than your average config. And yeah, so my entire ZSH RC would be in GitHub later, so that's something there later in the description of this word or on YouTube or somewhere. So I don't think I'm going to add anything else here. I'm pretty happy with this setup. The only thing that I might change later, if I guess we're going to do it later. So I'm not really sure if I want to install Tmax yet on yeah, I'm not sure if I want to install Tmax yet. So that's something that we're going to do probably on the next. We'll see if we want to do that. And I'm not sure if how heavily I'm going to customize the color scheme item as well, because we probably need to pick some theme. I prefer light theme colors, so it's actually quite hard to find the colors that will match the light theme. But I guess that would be something to be done for the next stream. And everything else, yeah, this would be enough. Okay, so for those who are watching later, I'm going to publish this VOD on YouTube as well. I will add all descriptions. I will cut down unnecessary parts from the VOD, and you will have my configs available on GitHub if you want to refer to it. And yeah, I guess we can end the stream here. Thank you everyone. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.